Hello, this is Mayor Bollwage, and welcome to another edition of Our City. First of all, a few things going around the city of Elizabeth this week. On Wednesday, August 25th, around 5 o'clock, I'm going to join other members of the Uruguayan community as we raise the Uruguayan flag celebrating their independence in front of City Hall. And on Friday, August 27th at noon, I will attend the grand opening and the ribbon cutting of Harmony Christian Academy, located at 664 New York Avenue. On Saturday, August 28th at 1 p.m., I'll attend the 6th annual Senior Citizens Goodwill Cookout at Miller Playground, located on Court Street. This event is hosted by the Citizens Going Forward group. And also that day, Councilman Bill Gallman will be hosting a block party as well on Court Street further in the neighborhood. We hope you celebrate and come with us that day as well. The City of Elizabeth and the County of Union, we have plenty of vaccines, and soon we'll be issuing the third shot for those that need it. And the governor has indicated that after 8 months, we'll be going to third shots for all people. We'll be talking more about that with our special guest in a few minutes. Residents can go to ucnj.org/vax or ucnjvaccine.org. Click on Union County, the Peterstown Community Center, the Dunn Sports Center, or Kane University. Or you could just call our health department if it's easier, 908-820-4250. I'm pleased to report that with the help of the County of Union, the City of Elizabeth is now at 78% vaccination rate, at least one dose. And we, I believe, are the best urban community in the entire state. Peterstown is open from 1 to 8 and Thursdays from 9 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The first time is only on Thursdays. The Dunn Sports Center is open on Thursdays from 4 to 7, and the hours at Kane University vary, so you can just check the county website for information. You do not need an appointment. Walk-ins are welcome. Masks are required, and there is no food, drink, smoking, or chewing gum 30 minutes prior. A photo ID is required. Anyone under the age of 18 must be accompanied by an adult. And as always, insurance is not needed, but if you have coverage, please bring a copy of the insurance card. Kids will need a copy of a birth certificate, a parent or guardian to sign on their behalf at the time of the appointment. So it's extremely important that we all get vaccinated. Try to follow social distance rules, wearing face masks or coverings when you're indoors, and make sure you wash your hands frequently. Personal responsibility is really important. Any questions, you can reach us on our social media sites or call our public information office at 908-820-4124. Now, I'm pleased to be joined on this week's show by our Deputy County Manager, who has been leading the fight on not only first starting with testing, but now with vaccines. She's been a great partner here in the City of Elizabeth. I'd like to welcome the Deputy County Manager, Miss Amy Wagner. Amy, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mayor. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
So, Amy, tell us a little about yourself. First of all, you kind of came up through the system in the county, right? You started off as a clerk, and now you're the Deputy County Manager. Tell us about some of your vital roles over there.
Oh, absolutely. So in addition to serving as the Deputy County Manager, I'm also the Director of Economic Development. So all of the CDBG programs, all the HUD-funded programs filter through me. All of our economic development related programs filter through my department. And then I get the pleasure of serving also as the Deputy County Manager, where I assist day-to-day operations with our County Manager, Ed Oatman.
But you didn't start there, did you, Amy?
No, I did not. I started actually working in the Township of Berkeley Heights for 3 years, and then I've been here for 11. Most of the beginning of my career here, I was focused very heavily on shared services, which I still am passionate about, and do a lot of work with that with our municipalities. But I've been here for 11 years.
So, Amy, we were talking before the show, ERAP. Can you tell us what ERAP is?
Absolutely. It's the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. There are actually 2 phases of ERAP. We're currently in ERAP 1. This is funded through CARES dollars, and it comes to us from the Department of Treasury. The County of Union was granted $16.6 million for this program. We've partnered with Ernst & Young to stand up a portal where people can register. So what's really required, Mayor, is that a tenant who has any rental arrearages dating back to March of 2020 can apply for the program. We also need their landlord to apply for the program so they can certify what is in arrears. The payments then are made directly to the landlord to catch people up. We know we have in excess of 5,000 eviction filings currently in Union County, which is a staggering number. And I don't really think it scratches the surface. Some of them haven't even been filed because of the moratorium that's in place against evictions. So should a landlord decide to participate in the program, they also have to agree that they will release any sort of eviction filing that they currently have with the court systems. They'd have to waive any late fees. And in addition to paying 12 months in arrears of rent, we are also able to pay 3 months of prospective rent. So we would also encourage a landlord not to file another eviction within 90 days after the assistance ends. That's what we're encouraging them.
So Amy, if I walk in there and or go on the portal, what documents would I need to apply for the assistance as a tenant?
As a tenant, what you need to do, you have to be a Union County resident. You need to have a lease. It needs to be an active lease or an extension of an active lease with some documentation from your landlord that states that. And you also have to be income eligible. You'd need to have identification for everyone in your household, and that can be any form of identification. You do not have to be documented. You can be undocumented, but you have to have something. It might be a passport from your home country. I know you have an ID program in the city of Elizabeth. It could be the city of Elizabeth's ID. Just have to have some form of proof of identity for each person that lives within the household. You need a copy of your lease. You also need either your 2020 tax filing. If you are exempt for some reason from filing taxes, there are affidavits that you can provide to prove income. If you don't have any income, there's also an affidavit that you can provide to us, and we'll give it, the EY team will give it to them just to certify that they don't have any income.
Talk about that portal. Is that the only way you can apply for assistance? Is there anything you can do by mail or in person, or does it have to be through the portal? Because sometimes some people are not exactly computer savvy.
Absolutely, and I'm glad you asked that question. We know everyone is not tech savvy. We also know that everybody doesn't have a computer at home. So we want to assist people as best we can. So we've partnered with 3 organizations, 3 nonprofits, the United Way of Greater Union County, Family Promise, and the Urban League. And any one of those organizations will assist people with filing their documents and getting on the portal. And then their landlord also needs to go in and register. And if a landlord has 25 properties that have rentals in arrears, they can go on one time and file for all 25 of those properties.
And when it becomes specific, the only way the landlord gets money is if the tenant comes in as well, and vice versa.
Correct. For right now, the way that the program is written by the Department of Treasury, a landlord can only be paid if the tenant participates. There is a provision for the tenant to be paid without the landlord. However, at this point, we are not doing that. We are not comfortable with not having the landlord certify what the rental arrearages are at this point.
You know, we have people here in Elizabeth where I've actually gotten calls from landlords who say, my tenant has been working all through the pandemic. They've been making money. They're making good money. But because of the governor's moratorium, they just refuse to pay the rent. How do we deal with people like that? It must be a little difficult.
It's a huge challenge, Mayor, to be perfectly honest. And we know that that situation exists. And it makes me feel so sad for the people that really are in a bad situation. And, you know, we're getting a good response, but not a great response to the program. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that no one's going to be evicted right now. So why should they file for this? Because they don't have to. But we also know there are a lot of people that this will benefit. So we're doing the best we can to get the word out to everyone and hoping that they will do the right thing. There's no way we can make someone pay their rent right now. And there's going to be a huge backlog when this thing clears of cases. If we're already somewhere in the neighborhood of 5,400 filings, and I've been told by a lot of landlords that they're not even filing the paperwork because they know it's not going to go anywhere. It costs them money to file. So everything that we've heard, and we're working very closely with the courts, this is just scratching the surface of where we will ultimately be.
So as one mayor in the county, I agree with your checks and balances, by the way, between the landlord and the tenant. I think that's important, extremely important. Can the assistants pay for anything else? Electric, heat, water, phone, or is it strictly the rent to the landlord?
No, it actually can pay for 12 months of electric and gas payments. We've established a partnership with the utility companies, so we can go in and get like certification of what is actually in arrears, and those payments will be made directly to the utility companies. We're not doing water. I'm sorry, we're not doing water and we're not doing telephone. We're just doing electric and gas.
So if I received assistance from social services on any other issues, can I still apply for this program?
Yes, you absolutely can. There's just a lot of checks and balances to make sure there's no duplication of benefits. If you have a Section 8 voucher, you're still eligible. So for example, if you have a voucher, your rent is $1,000 a month. We'll just use round numbers. And your voucher pays $500 and your portion is $500. Your portion is eligible for this program.
If I pay with a housing benefit, that's what you're just talking about.
Yep.
Income restricted affordable housing, you can still apply for assistance. So suppose I have a roommate, Amy, and can we both apply? Can both or three roommates, can we all apply for assistance?
It's one application per rental unit. So if you have three roommates, then all three of you should apply as one household. So all of your income and everything should be coupled together. Whatever has caused you the negative impact in your income should be taken into consideration as a household unit.
And so anyone in the household can apply, but you got to apply as a unit.
Correct. One person should apply on behalf of the entire household.
So here's an interesting question that somebody asked. If I have a baby and they aren't included on my lease agreement, do they count towards my household size?
No, they do not. Your household size is determined by who's included on the lease.
Oh.
So that's how we figure out what the income should be and exactly how large your household is. That's the only documentation we would have to prove it, so it does not factor in.
So yeah, so if you've been living there 5 or 10 years and your family has grown through the birth of children, you just can't add them to the household size.
No, however, if that were the case, it was a very long term and there were multiple children born, we would take that into consideration when determining household size, because that would factor into what the income limits are. So someone that has a large number of children, in the income guide, if we were figuring it on 2 children, the household income is X, right? But if there's 10 people in the household, there's a lot more wiggle room in the household income levels. So we would probably take that into consideration. We're finding, Mayor, that there are a lot of unique circumstances. So we have a framework in place, and we know that there are very likely exceptions for unusual circumstances, such as what you just described.
Like the birth certificate should match up somewhat to the parents' names that live there.
Correct. Absolutely.
Suppose you only meet some of the requirements. You talk about unique circumstances. If you meet some, but not all of the eligibility requirements, are you still able to get assistance?
You really do have to meet all of them, and there's not that many, right? You have to live in Union County. You have to have been financially impacted by COVID in some way. You have to have an active lease with a past due rent, and you have to be at least 80% of the area median income. So I'll give you an example of an area median income. For a household with 4 members, the maximum income would be $78,500. And the whole guide this is provided to us by HUD. So that's the guideline that we use. It's not a number we came up with. It's something that the federal government provides to us. So you have to meet all of those, but they're not like really difficult criteria to meet in order to participate in the program.
And is there a maximum dollar amount I can get?
No, there's not. The maximum is it's 12 months in arrears and 3 months prospective rent. If you live in a place where you're income eligible and your rent is $5,000 a month, we will pay $5,000 a month, 12 months back, 3 months forward. There is not a cap. And then
Maybe then we should define income eligible, especially if you haven't worked in 12 months. What's income eligible?
it's based off your 2020 tax return. So you may have been in a very different financial situation when you signed that lease, originally, and now over the last year, you've had no income at all or very, very limited income. It's based on that income level.
So people were thrown out of work in March or April of 2020, and they were still out at the end of the year. Their income is going to be extremely low.
Correct. And this dates back to March 13th of 2020. That's when the clock starts on when any of these circumstances would have been taken into consideration. Your status of your job, when you were impacted, or when you stopped paying rent. If you stopped paying rent in February of 2020, that's not eligible. It wouldn't start. The clock doesn't start till March 13th of 2020.
So how long would it take if I made an application today and the application was accepted? How long before the landlord actually gets the money?
It should be relatively quick, but it depends on circumstance. So the way that we will pay this is we pay by purchase order, because we're required to do that for the purchasing guidelines in the state of New Jersey. So provided that the landlord has their business registration certificate, and they have all the documents together, and when we send them the purchase order and they sign it right away, it could turn around in a matter of a week. But in all likelihood, it won't happen that quickly. So it would probably take a couple of weeks. But we'll make sure that all those payments, the 12, even if it starts into a new month of the 3 months perspective, we'll make sure they get all that money. So the 12 months arrears, 3 months going forward.
This may be a silly question, but will the landlord notify the tenant, or do you notify both the landlord and the tenant that X amount of dollars has been sent to the landlord?
Both parties are notified. The purchase order goes to the landlord for signature, and they also have to sign a grant agreement with us. But the tenant also is notified that the landlord was paid whatever the amount was and the time period that it's covered.
And if I've applied for assistance but wish to report unsafe living conditions at my residence and there's problems at my residence, do I do both at the same time?
They can go ahead and apply, file the application as they would, but they should also either call the New Jersey Bureau of Housing Inspection, which is 609-633-6241, or they can contact your municipal code enforcement office.
And so the registration process, is it the same for the landlords as it is for the tenant?
No, it's actually a lot less for the landlord. They have to provide their W-9 form, and they have to provide the addresses for all the properties that they own. They'd have to accept our terms and conditions. And then they also have to provide us with a rent ledger for each tenant that applies. So if you have multiple units, you're going to need to provide us with a rent ledger for what's in arrears for each of those tenants in the properties that you own.
So Amy, so far, I think the information is excellent. Do you see landlords balking at this because they may not want to supply ledgers and income for purposes of others to review?
Interestingly enough, we're running at about 25% match rate between the tenants that have applied and the landlords that have registered. As you know, we have the call center for the vaccines that's live. So we're using those folks to help us with this. In fact, they just did it this morning. They reached out to every landlord for a tenant that has applied and the landlord has not applied yet. So we've reached out to them directly and asked them to please go on the portal and register so that we can pay them for these rental arrearages. We also know that there may be some landlords that don't want to, suppose they're owed more than 12 months back rent, because this thing has been going on for almost 18 months now. So if someone stopped paying at the get-go, they're owed actually more than 12 months in arrears. If they don't want, and they have an eviction filing already in place, they may not want to more or less settle where they are for the 12 months in arrears, because they have to remove that eviction filing in order to get the money from this. So we expect there may be some resistance in that, but if I was a landlord, I would be happy to get 12 months arrears and 3 months going forward rather than have nothing. And we do know that we have a lot of smaller landlords that are struggling. This is their business. This is what they do for a living, and they have not been paid in 18 months. So for them to have some sort of cash flow is certainly a benefit to not having anything.
Can we talk about defining landlords? Does it matter if it's a 2-family or 300 units in a building?
The landlord cannot be living in the unit. That's really the only difference. But they can have as many units or one. It doesn't matter.
So if the landlord is living on the first floor, the second floor is eligible for rental assistance if it's someone different that they're renting to.
Unrelated to the landlord, correct.
Unrelated to the landlord.
And they would have to have a lease. So you can't say, you know, your mother-in-law's living upstairs. She's been living up there forever, but I'm going to say she's my tenant so that we can recoup this. There has to be, they're to be unrelated to the landlord. The tenant is to be unrelated to the landlord and has to have a lease in place.
So if I'm renting out a room to a college student, that would not qualify.
No, renting a room would.
No, if the college student is living in my house and I'm renting a room.
That would still, and they're not paying their rent, and they would still be eligible, but they can't be related to you, and they have to have a lease in place to cover that space.
So is there a funding limit for landlords over multi-buildings?
Nope, no limit.
No limit. And we talked about the eligibility.
$6 million, Mayor, we want to spend it. We have a lot of money. Just in this round,
round. And there may be other rounds, right?
We have another round already, which we've received part of the money for. That's going to be around $14 million, but we can't even touch that until we spend at least 65% of round one. And we haven't paid any out yet because we just started the program the beginning of August.
Can I apply on behalf of a tenant? Say the tenant is disabled in any way, shape, or form.
No,
can you apply on behalf of the tenant?
You cannot apply on their behalf. You could assist them with their application, but you cannot apply on their behalf.
If my tenants approve their assistance, you're telling me that probably a month, right?
Before you get your money?
Right.
I would say max a month to get your money.
Can landlords play games and take the money and then file a eviction notice?
Can they? Yes, they can. If they have a filing in place, again, we're communicating directly with the court, so they're going to know who we're paying and what we're paying. If they have a filing in place today, when they accept the funds from us, they have to sign an affidavit. The landlord has to sign an affidavit saying that they will release that action. They could technically turn around the next day and file again. They are encouraged, and that's all we can do, is encourage them not to file for 30 days after that 3-month prospective rent ends. Okay. But in order for them to have a valid case, they have to prove that they weren't paid. We're going to make sure the courts know what they were paid.
If I'm having trouble submitting my tax ID during registration, what do I do then?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It's something that we've seen with some folks that have accessed our portal that had a little bit of challenge getting their numbers in. They just have to put it in as just the numeric digits of their tax ID number.
Regarding the portal, is there a phone number they can call if they have problems? Yes,
actually, I'm happy you asked that question. We do have a call center just specific to this program. That number is 855-552-1172. That call center is open from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. They have operators there that speak both English and Spanish at all times. There's somebody in place. And as far as the portal goes, The application is available in English and in Spanish, and if a person uses Google Chrome, you can translate the application into like 100 different languages. So we're trying to address all possible challenges folks might have.
So Amy, I really want to thank you on all of the information you provided on this program, because we are getting questions here in City Hall, and all of the information is extremely helpful. And we want to work with the county in any way, shape, and form to help our residents and our landlords.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I really appreciate the opportunity to get the information out to the public. You and your staff, as always, are tremendous partners. We couldn't do what we do without you. So we appreciate the close working relationship that we have with you and everyone that works for you.
So real quick, before we close, you heard the governor may issue 8 months for third shots. I guess we'll have to gear up again.
I'm ready.
I'm ready.
We did give our first third shot to immunocompromised folks on Saturday. Last Saturday, we had, I think, 4 people that received their shots, and we've been doing it since then. So we're ready for that, and we'll gear up and be ready for the next thing when it comes.
Yeah, it looks like September we'll start the 8-month process. So
I think so.
thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Mayor.
For Amy Wagner, this is Mayor Chris Bollwage. We'll see you next week on another edition of Our City.